Hi, my name is Edvards van der Vendel. I'm an author from the Netherlands, and I'm here in this surroundings, which is actually a holiday home, a cabin, just for a few days, to answer some questions to Latvian readers about my book, Zilās, zāles, vasara, which is the Latvian translation by Viņš of my book, De dagen van de bluegrassliefde, the days of bluegrass love. I'm very happy that my company in Latvia, Liels und Maats, decided to translate this book since it's an important book to me. This book was written quite long ago. It was written in 1998 and it was published in 1999. And since then, so for over 22 years, it has been a book that is available in shops in the Netherlands. After a translation in the early 2000s in Germany, Latvia was the second country to publish this book. This book is about a Dutch boy, the 18-year-old boy. His name is Tycho, and he has no plans for the summer, so he goes to the United States for a children's camp. He's going to be an extra leader there. But already at the airport, he meets a fellow leader, another 18-year-old boy, which is from Norway, and his name is Oliver. The book from there on tells about this camp, but mostly about the friendship of the boys that quite immediately turns into a love affair. And what I wanted to write, and that is also the inspiration that I got for this book, is to write about this very first, very important, life-changing love, the infatuation and the love affair itself. And then from within, I just wanted to write about all these feelings that you have, all the insecurities, all the happiness, all the intense closeness that you have. These two boys are supposed to be read from within. So hopefully when the reader is reading this, he or she feels a little bit the things that Tycho, the Dutch boy, felt. At the time, I must say that in Netherlands there were not many novels for young people that were about this great love between two boys or two girls. There were some, and I think I read some when I was a little bit younger at the time, but most of them were quite heavy, quite serious. There was always something extremely wrong, like one of the boys had a disease or one of them was already dead. And the story was in retrospective. And I just wanted to have lots of happiness in the book. I mean, of course, a book is a book and it needs some problems because otherwise you don't get to the end of the story. But in general, it's written like the beating heart that love can bring. So the book came out in 1999. It got an award in 2000, which was the award for the best book for youth in the Netherlands, which was really uplifting, and I was very happy with that, especially because that gave a lot more attention to the book. This meant that there was a lot of promotion. I was invited on TV to talk about this book, and I actually think that this book changed my writing, not so much because of the book or the success of the book, but by the fact that that was the first time that I got lots of response. I got so many reactions, so many mails. Actually, still, I get some responses sometimes about this book, but mainly in the first years, mostly boys, but also girls wrote to me what they had felt after reading the story, or that they used the story to tell their friend that they were in love with him, or to tell their parents what they were feeling. So they used the book for more than just the story. So the fact that this book kept itself alive, that there were readers asking me about Tycho and Oliver, about the two main characters, asking me how they were, what was happening to them. Not only gave me the idea that maybe I wrote about two living people, even though I had made them up, but also inspired me to write a second and a third novel about the same characters. So I did. 7 years later, I wrote the second book, and 14 years later, I wrote the third book. The story itself was not based on true events. But that's only half true. I didn't have this big love in a camp in the United States with an American boy. I have no experience like that. On the other hand, I did go to an American camp as a leader I brought some children to that camp, to an international summer camp. So lots of the circumstances that I wrote about, like you could say the background, that is real. Also, in my life, I have been in love with another boy. So it might not have been a Norwegian boy, but those feelings I have experienced myself. The title, The Days of Bluegrass Love, has to do with bluegrass music. So in the story, these boys go to, for instance, one music night. And bluegrass is the old-fashioned country-style music that stems from the south of the United States. It's very fast, very fiery music, very alive. And for some reason, I thought that was fitting to the story. My first experience with this music was also there in that camp in Knoxville, in Tennessee, in the US. And I had not heard of such music before, but I must say that I've started to like it because it stuck to my memories of those times. But if I'm completely honest, it was not the music I was listening to when I was 18, but I had a peculiar taste in music. I think I was listening to like French chansons, songs from France, or even German songs. Not so much the schlagers, but the art house music with very, very elaborate lyrics, very difficult texts. So not really pop music. But I don't think I put that into those characters. It was one of my first books. My debut was in 1996. And this book, as I said, was from 1999. And I think there were only 2 or 3 books in between. And this was the first time I wrote prose. I came from poetry. Up till now, I write as much poetry as I write prose. But then I think I was not really aware of what I was doing. So that means that in this story, I think there's quite a lot of poetry. I made 2 editions, actually. So the first edition stems from 1999, and then I made another edition in 2015, and then I took out a little bit of the poetry because maybe there were a little bit too many metaphors. For me, poetry and prose can be closely connected. I don't think my poetry is very difficult, although, of course, you could say that in prose there's always a main character. And in poetry there isn't, especially not for children or for young people. But I think The Days of Bluegrass Love, or the Latvian translation that you read, is the closest thing of prose that I wrote, and it came the closest to poetry maybe. So this book is, you could say that, an LGBTQIA+ book. I don't think it's a very political book. I don't think it's a very activist book. The activism is only maybe in the description, in exploring the inner world of this being in love, this love between 2 boys. But actually, I find that the love between two boys or two girls is no different than the love between a boy and a girl, or a trans boy and a girl, or a trans boy and a trans girl, or any other variation. Love is love. That is what we cannot say enough. I don't think that this book took a stand in the activist discussions that we have and that we had. On the other hand, I do think that I, as a gay writer, should stick close to what I know, and therefore this absolutely is my subject. And I didn't only write 2 other novels about these 2 boys, but I also wrote last year, for instance, a big interview book with 22 LGBTQIA+ young people from the Netherlands and Belgium. So an interview book to give them a voice. And I plan on writing more books for LGBTQIA+ youth. You could say that in the Netherlands, which was the first country where LGBT+ people could get married, this is maybe quite a modern society, or we are way ahead, but this is only half true. There are always situations for everyone who isn't part of the majority where he or she they have to explain themselves, something that should never be necessary. So the only thing I can do as a writer is to make my characters as honest and as true to life as possible, so that young people, or even older people that read my books, get connected heart to heart with these 2 gay boys. So I hope I answered some of your questions in the right way. I'm still very, very content that some of you could read this book and maybe want to read this book. I do hope I will have the opportunity to come to Riga again and to meet some of you, and maybe for a festival or maybe just for a visit. I'm actually quite fond of Latvia. I've been there 6 times, and some of my good friends live there. So I really hope to see them again and see you again. And maybe I can bring a bit of my main characters with me, and hopefully Oliver and Tycho can say hello to you. Paldies!